started our field trip by visiting Polytechnic company, a family-owned company that has dedicated 50 years of development and production to bioenergy. Polytechnic is constructing boilers that use woody fuels from 500 kilowatt all the way up to 30 megawatt of power. They are producing both heating plants, combined heating and power plants that are using biomass. The company has about 450 workers that are employed both in Austria, in Hungary, and in Romania. And it has really set several milestones in technology development for the clean and efficient use of biomass and of the conversion of biomass to energy. Recently, Polytechnic has developed the most advanced system for the combustion of biomass, the so-called Polyheld technology, a technology that employs gasification as a means to create a totally clean combustion. This technology is the latest step towards achieving actually zero emission boilers that use biomass as a fuel. The amazing thing about that technology is that it makes any type of flue gas treatment obsolete. The flue gas is so clean that it needs no additional flue gas cleaning after leaving the boiler. The district heating system of Sulz is serving a small village of about maybe 2,000 inhabitants with heating and hot water throughout the year. It uses wood chips that are coming from the surrounding forests, utilizing low-value wood that would not be able to be used for anything else but energy. The system is owned and operated by ENGIE, a worldwide operating energy company that has purchased this district heating system and has refurbished it with the most advanced technology available, the Polyheld technology of Polytechnic company in Austria. The heating system in this district heating plant is quite unique in a number of ways. Firstly, it is extremely flexible. It can take fuel that is very dry, from 10% humidity or lower, all the way up to fuel that is up to 45% of humidity. In addition to being very flexible regarding the fuel, it's also very flexible regarding the load, so the power that is needed. It can reduce the power all the way to 10% of the original capacity of the boiler, and it can expand it to over 120% of the design capacity of the boiler. So a very flexible system, at the same time an extremely clean system, a system that boasts of 5 milligrams of dust emissions after the boiler without any flue gas cleaning system attached. So something that is absolutely unique, and I think the future of bioenergy use. When the system was first tested by a testing lab, they thought that their equipment wasn't working properly because they could not detect any CO emissions. It was absolutely zero CO because the combustion works so perfectly well. The system operates at 3% excess oxygen, so with very little excess oxygen, and with a flue gas temperature of 130 degrees, which means that the efficiency of the system is 96%. No energy is lost. The secret of this technology is that biomass is not just burned by adding a lot of air. It is working with a stage of gasification where very little air is added into the glowing bed of ambers. This glowing bed of ambers has about 400 to 500 degrees only. And in the amber, fumes are created, a gas in fact, that is later on combusted. But before it is burned, these fumes go through a bed, through a layer of fuel that keeps or retains all the ashes, all the dust particles, and that is the reason why the whole system works so cleanly. All the dust particles are caught in the thick layer of fuel that is slowly moving down, being gasified, and the fumes that are created that are burned afterwards without any dust. Yeah, the next thing that we visited were the forests of Vienna, and we got a local forester to show us around in the forest. And the first thing we saw was a pile of energy wood that was dedicated to be brought to the combined heat and power plant of the city of Vienna. This plant produces about 30 megawatts of electricity and about 60 megawatts of heat that are then utilized in the Viennese district heating grid. And the question is, why are these trees being cut? Why are they not being used for other more valuable purposes? And the answer is quite simple. The trees that you see on this pile are not suitable for any other purpose. Typically, a good tree, a nice tree with a straight trunk of the right species would go to a sawmill to be cut up into boards or to plywood or whatever. The second typical use for the deciduous forests of Vienna is the use to produce textile fiber. There is technology in Austria used where this wood can actually be converted into textile fiber, and that's a very environmentally friendly way of producing textiles. And a lot of the trees in this forest are being used for that, if they are not good enough for being cut up for timber. And then the rest of the trees, well, how to use them? The problem is that the particle board industry has an abundance of raw material and doesn't take them. So in fact, it is a great advantage for managing the forests that these trees can be used as fuel wood. The forest manager, he told me that he's so glad that he has the power plant now to be able to market the small beech trees that would otherwise not be marketable, because he would have hundreds of cubic meters of this wood without a market, because the board mill, they wouldn't take it, or they would take it without paying, and so he has a safe place where to put it. And only the existence of the power plant actually enables him to manage the forest in a way that it is a forest that can withstand climate change.
First, like here, if you have to classify kind of the objectives, is it first biodiversity, or is it first economic, or is it first landscape for tourism?
Yeah, that should be in balance if it's possible. Of course, we have an economic objective, but also the forest law binds us to a biodiversity objective. So we try to act sustainable, and sustainability in its three dimensions: nature, economy, and society. And in the best form, you can combine these. It's not always easy, but you can combine. And of course, there can be parts of the forest that have one priority, and parts of the forest that have the other. But in the great whole, the whole forest should be in balance. And biodiversity will grow more important. When we plant, we try to plant endemic species, and sometimes we experiment with species from elsewhere, say Douglasy or red oak, for example. But that should be in a small, on a small scale basis.
If we look a little bit further down the road, you even see some thicker trees. And you would say, oh my God, you're not going to burn these trees. The problem is that these trees are of species that have no use neither as cut wood, as board wood, nor for the production of fiber or for the production of pulp, because they are not the right species. So instead of just leaving them to rot in the ground, they are also being used for energy. Again, because they cannot be used in any further or higher use. So the question you might ask is, well, why are these trees cut at all if there is no high value use for it? And the issue is that in order to provide a stable forest, the trees must stand wide enough apart for every tree to have enough space to grow properly and to grow a thick trunk. If the trees are standing too densely in the forest, what happens is that they grow extremely slowly and the trunk is going to be very thin. And that makes them very, very weak. So a storm can throw them over quite easily. Or sometimes we have weather where very heavy snow is falling on the trees and then the trees are breaking. So that is the issue with the need of taking out trees of the forest. And there is another reason for doing that. And that is that the forest is suffering from climate change. Climate change means that it is getting drier, it is getting hotter, and the species that are growing in the forest are not all suited for that type of climate change. So what right here in the forests of Vienna, the Austrian federal forests are trying is to support those species that can stand dry, hot weather. For example, the oak tree has very deep roots and can live in an environment that's hot and dry. But in order to make the oak tree grow, the oak tree needs a lot of light. The oak tree cannot grow under a thick forest cover. So what is happening is, if you want to create a forest that is able to handle climate change, you need to take out trees to allow those trees, the oak trees, to grow.
This also puts very much shade on the ground, and if you want oak, you have also to extract the second layer of the beeches to get the oak.
And again, this creates the need to market wood, to do something useful with the wood. And if that wood cannot be used in another way, it is going to be used for energy.